So in our personal life, there's these gauges that I think most of us would monitor. How are the spiritual disciplines? Are you having a quiet time? Are you studying? Physical disciplines? Are you getting asleep? How are you eating? All of that kind of stuff. But then there's this one that sort of is unrecognized often, and it's the emotional gauge of our life that's the result of the pace. What things do you do to manage your schedule, to manage your calendar and that kind of thing? What tips would you give in that way?
You know, for me, I found that having a hard end of the day is really important. So I leave the office 3:45, I hit the gym at 4, I'm home by 5:30 and dinner with my family. And this is a really big deal because, as you know, we're never done. And having a hard end of the day makes me more productive, not less productive. For example, if you're gonna leave town on Wednesday to go on vacation, you know, you get 5 days worth of work done by Wednesday somehow, magically. What it does is a hard end of the day it does three things. It makes me say no to things I shouldn't be doing. It makes me make faster decisions, and it makes me delegate things that someone else could do. And so if I didn't have a hard end of the day and I could work till 6:37, I really think that I would be less productive, not more productive. So that's one of the things I do. And then another thing is just empowering a group of people around to watch and to call me on something to say, hey, you know, your travel schedules, whatever. I don't travel nearly as much as most of my peers, but you know, during that season, you know, this is going on. Hey, remember your daughter's getting married this summer. Don't you want to say no to everything that month? You know, that kind of thing. And having people around me that can help. You know, people ask you to do something next September, and your calendar looks pretty free next September until next August. And, right? And so people who kind of give you perspective to help you say no.
Yeah. Pastor Brian, you have a global schedule. What have you learned that are helpful tips to manage that?
Well, I learned I'm not invincible. When I was young, I genuinely thought that things like emotional burnout were for other people, and I guess, you know, I was quite idealistic about it, and I was that guy who that would never happen to. You know, I was pretty easygoing, and life was a bit of a breeze, even when it came to tough times, especially if it's to do with the church. I always felt like I was born for this. So even, you know, issues that we all go through in church life, it stressed me, but not in a way that was, you know, really having a negative impact on me. But when I mentioned about my father in 1999 and finding out he was a paedophile, and then some of the fallout from that, and then some of the external things outside of the church that came at me, like press. We've had relentless press scrutiny in Australia since 2002. And some of those things that did slowly wear me down. I did start sleeping badly. I did get to the point where from flying and taking an Ambion, that I ended up taking two, because in Australia it's 14-hour flights. I'd take one, get 3 hours sleep, take another one, get 3 hours sleep, take one just for the first couple of days I was home so that I'd be able to function, especially if I was going straight into a conference. Found myself after a while where I took Ambion every day of my life for 20 years. And I think it had that and other things had an impact on me emotionally. I started losing my confidence. I just found myself in a place I never ever believed I could get. So that concluded when I remember someone explaining it to me for us pastors, where, you know, we're already redlining. So the way we live, we're already redlining. So all you need is one extra thing to come in over the top, and you get into that dangerous area. And I think that's true, because we live these sort of busy, pressured lives. And so I found some of those external things, including one or two things to do with my own kids, just simply over the side. I ended up having a massive panic attack. And it was the most humiliating thing. I got up to speak to one of our smallest campuses, about 400, 500 people. And I got up, I was prepared, and I knew I was in trouble walking up. My legs buckled. And the only way I can describe it, even though I was fully prepared, was I felt like I was a Sunday school kid giving a Sunday school lesson. And at the end, I've been doing salvation altar calls for 40 years. I couldn't even do a simple salvation altar call. I felt like I just humiliated myself in front of a whole lot of people. People there said it wasn't that bad, but I know it was. And went home that night, had a huge panic attack. I didn't even know what it was. And so Bobby knew what it was. We managed to get onto a doctor in our church, and it was well after midnight, who was able to talk me through it. And so that was the beginning of me really making some big adjustments. And they mainly related to the way I do things. And by God's grace, the doctors were like, Bleak, you'll have to take 12 months fully off and so on. But by God's grace, I bounced out of it really quickly. And we did make adjustments. And I did take a sabbatical, though Pastor Robert doesn't think so, because I did preach quite a bit in the weekends. And so on. So now I feel fantastic. I got my mojo back as far as I'm concerned. And, I feel like I'm on top of my game again in leadership and in preaching and so on, which is a great place to be. But I learned never to take your health for granted and never ever feel it can't happen to you. No matter how invincible you feel, if you're not making the right choices, you will find yourself in a place you never believed you could get. And if you're not good, you can't lead anyone well. You can't do it. It's impossible. So, yeah.
That's good.
And just to add one thing, define the difference between being tired and being depleted. And when you can learn what depletes you, because a lot of times we'll say, I'm tired. Well, if you're tired, you could sleep and wake up the next day and you're fixed. But when you're depleted, you can't. You wake up the next day and you're still empty. And ministry is fun. I get pumped up. Sometimes I can't go to bed at night because, boy, I just had such a great day at the conference. But when this thing's over, I'll be depleted some. I emptied some tanks, some mentally, my emotional tank, my spiritual tank. And so I've learned to say, I'm not just tired, I'm depleted. And so I need to now go and be replenished physically, mentally, emotionally, and of course, spiritually.
I think it's a good word. You guys may want to add something here too, but I can just imagine that in this group right now, there's a significant number of people that were redlined and now is in the danger zone. And so whenever I'm working with someone that's been there, I always ask the question, what radical change do you need to make? And what really significant change you need to make, because you're all smart people. If some tweak would have done it, you would have done it a long time ago. You're sharp, you would have seen that. And it might be wise before this day is over to get a couple of trusted people and just recognize, the difference between you pulling out and doing well and you curling up in a ball and burning out it might be the decisions you make in the next few days. And so if you are at that place, take it seriously. Don't pretend like it's not real. It is real. And start asking, what significant changes do you need to make? And I think, you've been one of the greatest examples of kind of heralding the real break, the real sabbatical, and you've done this well for years and years. And so you guys might have a bit more tips. But anyway, if you're there, pay attention to it, call it what it is, get some help now. I've been in counseling 2 different times for being a workaholic and dealing with those issues. And so, don't be afraid to call for help, get it, and come out better on the other side.